From escaping into relationships to a journey of self-discovery. Welcome back to Irrepressible, ordinary people with extraordinary resilience. And in this incredible episode, I speak to Katie. Now, Katie talks a lot about how she used relationships in her life and things like alcohol to try and fill a void. And I think it's something that a lot of us can relate to, how we set about our lives trying to fill that void that to some degree I think all of us have felt in our lives with things like relationships and going out and partying and alcohol. And I think what I love about this interview with Katie is Katie talks about it in a really relatable way, one that's going to resonate with literally everyone. And then Katie gives us a lot to take away as well. She gives a lot of kind of hope and the realization that when we change and move away from those more unhealthy coping mechanisms, we can find a way to make ourselves lovable just as we are. And that, I think, is the biggest message in this episode. If this is the first time that you've ever been here, then please do make sure that you subscribed, you turned on the notifications so you know each and every time that we post a video. And I really hope you enjoy this interview. So, Katie, I'm joined by you today. How are you feeling?
I'm good. I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm good. Yeah, I'm good today.
Nerves is good. It just shows that you care about what we're going to do. So the best way to do this is for me to get you to introduce yourself. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing in the world today?
So I'm Katie. I live in the UAE at the minute. I moved out here 9 years ago. I actually work in oil and gas. I've worked for the same company for 20 years. But over the last maybe 4 or 5 years during my journey to self-discovery, should we say, I've got a passion now for helping other people try and overcome their issues. So yeah, maybe a small change in career is on the horizon. I'm not sure, but yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Okay, brilliant. And you've definitely got, I know you fairly well now, and you've definitely got the coaching kind of helping other people part of you is definitely shines through. So today we want to talk a little bit about resilience. We want to talk about you and your journey. So why don't we just jump straight in and you tell us a little bit about the adversity that you've faced, that you felt has meant that you've had to be resilient in your life?
Yeah. So first of all, one of the biggest difficulties for me is that I had a great upbringing. I had an amazing mum and dad who loved us. We wanted for nothing. So that was one of the biggest struggles I've had in understanding how I've faced adversity. But when I was maybe 8 or 9 years old, my dad actually had a heart attack and he was in hospital. And then when I was maybe 3 years later, he then had another heart attack, had to give up work, and he had a triple heart bypass. And yeah, he wasn't well, basically. But all of this stems from, they say, a dad is a daughter's first love. And I truly believe that. I was a daddy's girl through and through. He was probably one of the closest people to me growing up. And we never really spoke about him being ill. So I think subconsciously in my mind, at such a young age, I knew that I was going to lose my dad eventually. And that then, it made me crave trying to replace him before he'd even gone. So for many, many years, subconsciously, I knew that I was going to lose him and I need to replace this father figure in my life, which resulted in me being attracted to anybody that gave me attention, because it was like, oh yes, he's here. This can be the guy that's going to stand in for my dad, which resulted then in, when I was 18 years old, I found a partner who was a few years older than me. We moved in together, we got a mortgage. This was all at a very, very young age. And a lot of people would look on me and say, oh, she just wants to grow up sooner than she has to. She wants to. But I think deep down, I was just craving that love and attention, really, from a father figure. And the relationship didn't last very long. It lasted maybe 3 years, but it was a very toxic relationship. He was gambling, we got into debt, and I mean a lot of debt. It took me a very long time to get out of it. And eventually, there was a woman in work, an old boss in work, and she died at the age of 40. And that made me sit back and think, am I really wasting my life with somebody that I don't want to be with? So I ended that relationship. But then it just left a big hole because I was craving love so much, and now I didn't have it anymore. And that's when it all just spiraled out of control. I was drinking far too much. I wouldn't say that I had a drink problem as such, but I came dependent on drink because that was my excuse for my actions. So I found that I was sleeping around a lot more than a young girl should be anyway. And then I got offered a job in the UAE. And at the time, that was my way to escape, because a lot of my friends started questioning my behavior. And it was, out in the UAE, there's going to be nobody close to me, so I'm free to do whatever it is that I want to do. So when I came out here 9 years ago, it just got worse. And through all of this, every single time it happened, I lost that little bit more self-respect. And just over the time, it got to the point where I couldn't even look in the mirror because I hated who I'd become. And I was ashamed of it. And I think that I was ashamed because I was making my actions my identity. Yes, I was doing things that I didn't want to do, but to me, I was making myself a really bad person. And that was one of the key lessons for me to try and separate the both of them. But it all came to a head when it was in December last year, and we went on a Christmas night out with everybody from the gym. And I got so drunk and I embarrassed myself because I thought, this is me, this is what people want to see, this is the Katie that people know. And it was only when I woke up the next day and that feeling of dread came on, I actually avoided the gym for maybe 2 or 3 months.
Wow, yeah.
And then it was, is this what you want to be doing? Because if it is, that's fine. But why are you hiding away from your actions, basically? So that's when I really started to question, why am I doing it? And that's when it came back to the zero self-respect, basically, and wanting to fill that void of losing my dad. But I started the journey back in 2016, which is, it's quite strange because that's when we eventually lost my dad, back in 2016. And around that time, we got introduced to relationship coaching in work. And through that journey, you have to look at yourself. You can't not look at yourself during coaching sessions. And that's when it really all started to unravel about why I was doing the things that I was doing. And I was attracting emotionally unavailable people because I didn't want anybody to see the real me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's why.
You know, a lot of what you've said really resonates, particularly the kind of, I was 18 when I got into my first, what became my first marriage. I had a first child when I was 18, and I was doing the same thing, really, in just wanting to feel part of something, trying to fill a void, as opposed to kind of connecting with someone to create like a bond or a relationship, and
Mm-hmm.
then that naturally means that you don't want an emotion, you don't know it, but you don't want an emotionally available person because you don't want to connect with them emotionally. You just want
No.
them to meet that need, right?
Yeah.
And then it really resonated with me when you said every time I did something else, it sort of took that bit of respect away.
Mm-hmm.
That you like chip away at yourself, don't you? Until I think
Yeah.
you just reach this. And everyone I speak to always has that kind of moment. And it sounds like the moment after the night out with the gym people was the one where you start to get really, you can't run away anymore. And you have to ask yourself those serious questions.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I particularly like that you said, do I want to be like this? Because if I do, then that's fine, right?
Yeah. And there was, I'm not saying that anything that I did was bad, if that's who I wanted to be.
Yeah.
But deep down, I knew that it wasn't, because I was ashamed of what I was doing. So
Yeah.
it was like, but to people asking me the questions, it'd be, I don't want a relationship, I just want to have fun. But deep down, it was like, no, I do want a relationship, I do want to be loved, but I didn't feel like I was worthy of it because I had no self-respect.
Yeah. And
So that was my way of feeling something.
Yeah, to feel, like you say, I think you used the words filling a void, right?
Yeah.
And I think, this just shows as well how I'll use the word trauma, because I think trauma is about what happens to us as a result, inside of us as a result of what happens to us, right?
Yeah.
And when what happened with your dad, who was like your everything, and then all of a sudden, and I can imagine, at that age when it happened to you, you don't have this idea that it could ever end, do you? It's just like,
No.
that's my dad, he's the most amazing thing in the world. And then all of a sudden you're slapped with this realization that he's not going to be there at some time, it's going to end, it's finite. And then the way that you reacted to that was to panic and think, I need to make sure I fill that void that's going to be there.
Yeah. And that, I mean, so when I think of trauma, it's only recently I've realized that was a traumatic experience for me.
Yeah.
But previously, when I think of trauma, it's when you've had a bad upbringing or when something really bad has happened to you. So that was really one of the biggest struggles for me, because why am I acting the way I am when I've not experienced any trauma?
Yeah.
But I have.
Yeah, exactly. And one of our trauma responses, very common and happens in nearly everyone, is to devalue our experience and say, that wasn't that bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course we do that, because that's how we protect it. We're trying to protect ourselves from it, right? It's not that bad. I mean, it's, those people over there have got it way worse than us. And, this is why you kind of know me and my beliefs, but my beliefs are that we've all experienced some kind of trauma in our lives, right?
Yeah. It's just that other people might not necessarily have seen it or know about it.
Yeah, or you might not have even experienced it at the time as being traumatic until you sort of. So what do you think? What have you done? What's enabled you to do it since you kind of had the realization? It sounds like when you started doing the relationship coaching in, like, when was that? 2016, did you say?
Yeah, 2016.
That started to have an effect. But do you feel like since December, the Christmas thing with the gym, do you feel I sense that's when things have started to really change for you?
Yeah, so that was at the start of December, and it was about 3 weeks later I got in touch with a life coach.
Right.
And I need your help.
Yeah.
Because I think I'd done as much work as I could on my own.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to do the work by yourself. So I kind of knew then that I had a problem, and I just needed somebody else to really help me see it and get through it. And I look back now, I mean, it's only been 10 months. I don't recognize the girl that walked into that room with the coach that day anymore. It's unbelievable how much I've changed since.
Yeah.
And it's all through just getting help and speaking to somebody about it. I think I've not ended the journey yet. I think I've still got a long way to go, but I think we're all working on ourselves.
Yeah, I don't think there is an end. I think
No.
once you start doing it, I just think there's just more levels that you can
Yeah.
go to, right? That's been my experience. And look, I've only sort of known you from, within that 10-month period, right?
Hmm.
And you've obviously done loads of work, because I would never have thought that you were going to tell me what you've just told me.
Really?
I had no idea. I kind of knew that there was something about the dad because of some of the work we've done in the other
Yeah.
space. So I kind of knew that was that. I just thought it was going to be that. And I thought you was going to
Yeah.
say, and I never, and I didn't feel like I was dealing with it, but now I'm dealing with it.
Yeah.
So, I feel like I'm pretty good at sensing stuff in people, and I wouldn't have sensed any of that. So that, I
Yeah.
guess in a way that's testament.
Yeah.
So like, because of the way in which I talk about resilience, what I'm picking up, the first thing that enabled you to be resilient was reaching out for help, right?
Yes.
And
100%.
I think that's a major thing, with the work that we do around resilience, is to understand you don't have to do it on your own. And actually, the
Hmm.
realization that doing it on your own is not the right way is like the
No.
first kind of big thing. Would you say there's anything else when you think about the things that have enabled you to begin to change and bring about the life that you're living now?
So, I mean, reaching out for help was the starting point, but then a lot of it was learning just to love myself for who I am. And yes, I've done some less than desirable things. Like you say, I'm not making them good or bad. But I've forgiven myself for them. There was a reason for it. And I know now that I am worthy of being loved for who I am.
Yeah.
And that has probably been the hardest part of, because there's just been so many years of chipping away at that self-respect. And like I said, I couldn't even look in the mirror. I would literally just look in the mirror to brush my hair or do my makeup, but I hated the person that was staring back at me. So
Yeah.
that was the biggest part for me, was just learning to love me for who I am.
Yeah, there's just basically self-compassion, isn't it?
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
I think when you talk about self-care, you do all the work around it and everything that we can do. But for me, self-care always leads back to one thing, and it's that self-compassion, which comes
Yeah.
with forgiveness, right? Not just of the things that we've done in the past, but there's mistakes that we continue to make when we're trying to heal. Because I don't know about you, but certainly for me, when I first started changing, I had like a short period where it was like, I'm never going to mess up again. I mean, I know how to do it now. And then you mess up and you're like, all right, okay, I realize
Yeah.
this is like an ongoing thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. And then I guess the last question is, what do you, and you've talked a little bit about this, but let's just kind of bring some of it back to the front. What do you feel you've learned about yourself as a person as a result of these experiences?
So it probably does come back to the self-love, and I think as well, it's not making your actions your identity.
Yeah.
So you're not a bad person, you just may do bad things. So that's probably one of the biggest learnings. And then yeah, the self-love. We all deserve happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that what you're saying there, what did you say? Don't make yourself your actions.
Yeah, your actions aren't your identity.
Your actions aren't your identity. Yeah. And that
Yeah.
is the mechanism to self-love, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because when you understand that we're not bad people, we just do some bad things sometimes, that
Mm-hmm.
gives you the opportunity to love yourself for who you are.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
the thing about kind of healing and the kind of like change journey that we go on is that at the core it's very simple, right? It's very simple. It's just often very complex to live out, right?
Very complex. Yeah.
Very complex. I like that. So I'm going to ask you one more question. Actually, I'm going to ask you another question. If you could go back to yourself, the child that you was when you found out about what your dad was going to go through, what advice, or it doesn't have to be advice, what would you say to the person that you was then?
Wow, what a question. Just that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And you'll never really lose them. He'll always be there. just in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's deep. That's really powerful as well, right? And I felt emotion come up in me, by the way, then, as somebody who lost my dad when I was younger. That's not a kind of thought that I've ever had as to something that I would say to my younger self. You're not going to lose him, but just be there in a different way.
Yeah.
Wow. And I guess that's even true now that he's not here still.
Yeah. Because I know my dad is still with me. I don't talk to him as such, but it's what would my dad do? Do you know? And so he's still supporting me and everything. So I've not lost him. It's just he's just not here in person. Incredible.
Katie, I've been a little bit blown away by this, actually. Genuinely, I've been blown away, not just by your story, but by the kind of nuggets of wisdom that you've come out with at the end as well. That's touched me. It's made me quite emotional at a couple of stages as well with some of the things that you say. If anybody wants to find you, and I will link it all in the description and below as well, but if anyone wants to find you or wants to reach out to you, maybe, what's the best way to do that?
Probably Instagram. So it's just Katie Shields Coaching. But I would definitely, if anybody feels like they're going through something similar, definitely reach out to me. That's this is the first time I've ever really told my full story to anybody. But I just want to help other girls out there that are thinking that's what they need to be doing to get, and it isn't. There's different ways. So definitely if you need somebody to speak to, then I'm here.
Perfect. Katie, I appreciate you. This has been brilliant, and I can't wait to share it. So thank you.
Thank you.